there's a special kind of fear that comes from betrayal. It's not the fear of the unknown or the fear of a stranger in the dark. It's the fear that the person you trusted most, the one you let into your life, could be hiding a secret so dark it changes everything. Tonight, I'm sharing 3 real stories of friends who turned out to be dangerous. These aren't just cautionary tales. They're reminders that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones who know your name. The first story begins in a small town, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, or at least thinks they do. For years, Sarah and Emily were inseparable. They met in middle school, bonded over a love of horror movies and late-night talks, and by the time they reached college, they were more like sisters than friends. Emily was the wild one, always pushing boundaries, always looking for the next thrill. Sarah was quieter and more cautious, but she loved Emily's energy and the way she made life feel like an adventure. But as they got older, Sarah started to notice changes in Emily. She became secretive, disappearing for days at a time and coming back with stories that didn't quite add up. She started hanging out with a new crowd, older, rougher people Sarah didn't trust. One night, Emily showed up at Sarah's apartment, frantic and shaking. She said she needed a place to stay, just for a few days. Sarah didn't ask questions. She let her friend in, made her tea, and tried to calm her down. The next morning, Sarah woke up to find her apartment ransacked. Her laptop, her jewelry, even her grandmother's ring, gone. Emily was gone too. At first, Sarah thought they'd been robbed, but when she called the police, the truth came out. Emily had been using her as a safe house, hiding from people she owed money to. She'd stolen from Sarah to pay off her debts, and when the police finally caught up with her, they found evidence that she'd done the same thing to half a dozen other friends. The betrayal cut deeper than any loss. Sarah struggled for months to trust anyone again, haunted by the realization that the person she'd loved like a sister had been using her all along. The second story is about a man named Mark who met his best friend, Jason, in college. They were roommates, study partners, and eventually business partners, starting a small tech company together after graduation. Jason was charming, brilliant, and always seemed to know the right thing to say. Mark trusted him with everything: his money, his secrets, and his future. But as their company grew, Mark started to notice strange things. Money was disappearing from their accounts. Clients were complaining about deals that Mark knew nothing about, and Jason was becoming more and more evasive. When Mark confronted him, Jason laughed it off, blaming accounting errors and miscommunications. But the problems kept piling up. One day, Mark received a call from the police. Jason had been arrested for fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft. He'd been using the company as a front, siphoning money into offshore accounts and forging Mark's signature on dozens of documents. The investigation revealed that Jason had a history of scams, moving from city to city, making friends, gaining their trust, and then destroying their lives. Mark lost everything: his company, his savings, and his reputation. But the worst part was the sense of betrayal, the knowledge that the person he'd trusted most had been lying to him from the very beginning. Mark spent years rebuilding his life, but he never fully recovered from the shock of discovering that his best friend was his worst enemy. The third story is perhaps the most chilling. It comes from a woman named Lisa who met her friend Rachel at a support group for survivors of domestic abuse. They bonded over shared experiences, late-night phone calls, and the comfort of knowing someone else understood their pain. Rachel was kind, empathetic, and always seemed to know exactly what to say. Lisa trusted her completely, confiding in her about her fears, her hopes, and her plans for the future. But over time, Lisa started to notice red flags. Rachel was always asking for favors, rides, money, and a place to stay. She seemed to know things about Lisa's life that Lisa had never shared, and she became possessive and jealous of Lisa's other friends. One night, Lisa came home to find her apartment door ajar. Inside, Rachel was waiting, her face twisted with anger. She accused Lisa of abandoning her, of betraying their friendship. When Lisa tried to leave, Rachel blocked the door, threatening her with a knife. Lisa managed to escape and called the police. The investigation revealed that Rachel had a history of violence, stalking, and manipulation. She'd used the support group to find vulnerable women, gaining their trust before turning on them. Lisa was shaken to her core, struggling to reconcile the friend she thought she knew with the dangerous person she'd become. She moved to a new city, changed her number, and spent years in therapy, haunted by the memory of the night her friend became her attacker. These stories are more than just warnings. They're reminders that trust is a powerful thing, and that sometimes the people we let closest to us are the ones who can hurt us the most. If you think it could never happen to you, remember that every person in these stories thought the same thing. The scariest monsters aren't always strangers in the dark. Sometimes, they're the friends who know exactly where you live. For Sarah, Mark, and Lisa, the aftermath of betrayal was a different kind of horror, one that didn't end when the police left or the locks were changed. It was a slow, creeping realization that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild. The world felt smaller and colder, and every new friendship came with a shadow of doubt. But their stories didn't end with fear. They became lessons in survival, resilience, and the hard-won wisdom that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who know your secrets. Sarah spent months replaying every conversation, every laugh, and every late-night confession with Emily. She wondered how she could have missed the signs, how she could have let someone so close slip through her defenses. The loss of her belongings hurt, but the loss of her faith in people hurt more. She started keeping to herself, avoiding old friends, and turning down invitations. But over time, Sarah realized that isolating herself was letting Emily win all over again. She joined a local book club, started volunteering at an animal shelter, and slowly began to let people back in. She learned to trust her instincts, to set boundaries, and to recognize the difference between a friend and a user. The experience left scars, but it also made her stronger, more cautious, and more determined to protect herself. Mark's journey was even harder. The collapse of his business left him with debts, lawsuits, and a reputation in ruins. He spent sleepless nights combing through old emails, contracts, and bank statements, trying to piece together how Jason had fooled him for so long. The betrayal felt personal, like a knife in the back from someone he'd called a brother. Mark struggled with anger, shame, and the fear that he'd never be able to trust anyone again. But as the months passed, he found support in unexpected places. Former clients who believed in him, friends who refused to let him give up, and a new business partner who had been through a similar ordeal. Mark rebuilt his life from the ground up, this time with a new set of rules. Double-check everything, trust but verify, and never ignore a red flag. He became an advocate for small business owners, sharing his story to help others avoid the same fate. Lisa's recovery was a battle against fear itself. The night Rachel turned violent replayed in her mind like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. She moved to a new city, changed her name, and spent years looking over her shoulder. Therapy helped, but the anxiety lingered, a constant reminder that danger can wear a friendly face. Lisa joined a support group for survivors of stalking and abuse, finding comfort in the stories of others who had been betrayed by people they trusted. She learned to recognize the warning signs of manipulation, to set firm boundaries, and to trust her gut when something felt off. Over time, Lisa found peace, not by forgetting what happened, but by accepting that she couldn't control other people's actions, only her own response. What ties these stories together isn't just the shock of betrayal, it's the way it changes you. It's the realization that trust is a gift, not a guarantee, and that even the closest friendships can hide secrets. For Sarah, Mark, and Lisa, the danger didn't come from strangers or monsters in the dark. It came from the people they let into their lives, the ones who knew their hopes, their fears, and their weaknesses. But these stories are also about resilience. Each of them found a way to move forward, to rebuild, and to help others who might be walking the same path. They learned that survival isn't just about escaping danger. It's about reclaiming your life, your confidence, and your sense of self. They became advocates, mentors, and friends to those who needed a reminder that it's possible to heal, even after the deepest wounds. If you're listening to these stories and thinking, that could never happen to me, remember that every person in these stories thought the same thing. They were careful, they trusted their instincts, but danger still found a way in. The most important lesson is to be aware, to trust your gut, and to remember that it's okay to walk away from a friendship that doesn't feel right. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is protect yourself. And if you know someone who's been through something similar, listen to them. Believe their story, support their healing, and help them find their strength again. Survival isn't just about escaping the moment. It's about reclaiming your life, your confidence, and your sense of safety. As we come to the end of these stories, remember that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act in spite of it. Sarah, Mark, and Lisa are survivors, not just victims. Their stories are a testament to the power of instinct, the importance of community, and the strength that comes from facing your worst fears and coming out the other side. Thank you for joining me on this journey through 3 real stories of friends who turned out to be dangerous. If you have a story of your own, a moment when a friend became a threat, or when you had to make the hard choice to walk away, share it in the comments. You never know who might need to hear it, who might find comfort in knowing they're not alone. Stay safe, trust your instincts, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that could happen to any of us.